Well, ladies and gentlemen, the acquisition of Greenland possibly got a little bit closer to happening. We've got Donald Trump going all in on this potential territorial expansion, confirming that his son, that's another story, Don Jr. and others will be visiting Greenland, posting a video of a Greenland man telling him to buy Greenland. Trump has also posted something about Canada being the 51st state. It is very obvious Trump wants an expansion, and I have said the most likely situation would be Greenland and then probably the canal and then Canada, but there could be maybe some type of partnership with Canada that would not include Canada becoming the 51st state, but Trump is continuing with the same idea of making Canada the 51st state. I should say that because I did a video earlier today and I didn't see the Truth Social post, but he came on again and said he wants Canada to be the 51st state, which you could still say, well, it's a troll or whatever, but it's very clear that it does seem like he wants Canada because he's trying to talk to Canadians and be like, it could be a lot better. And he's doing the same thing with Greenland, but Greenland is a lot more realistic. You can see the updated chances on Donald Trump acquiring Greenland before July. It's up to 5%. So it went up to 6. I mean, you talk about July, seems pretty early. I don't know. It seems like a good bet though, with how aggressive Trump's being, but it's hard to put really a timeline on when this could happen. I do think there's probably a pretty good chance of it happening sometime within the 4-year term. But July is pretty close in terms of that. But what Trump said was, he said, quote, "I'm hearing that the people of Greenland are MAGA. Huge rumor going around the Arctic right now. They're all MAGA." His son, Don Jr., and various representatives will be traveling to visit some of the magnificent areas and sites. So they're doing a little sightseeing expedition, making sure what they buy is good. And I mean, that's really what this seems like this is, with his son going there. But yeah, I think that it's very obvious Trump wants a territorial expansion. He thinks it's going to be good for his legacy. And if he bought Greenland, it undoubtedly, as long as Greenland isn't too costly, and I don't think it would be, having a relationship with their government is very important, considering they do want to become independent. You could look at it from two different lenses. Number one, they don't want Denmark selling them to the United States, which would potentially be happening with Denmark, although Denmark says we don't want to sell them. Obviously, if Trump offers something really good to Denmark, I'm sure they'd be fine with it. So then Greenland's like, wait, we don't want that. We want to be independent. Or it could be Greenland understanding that they really can't operate without someone giving them, some form of assistance, because Denmark is like, they make up 1/3 of their GDP, just giving them money. And so maybe they're like, listen, we want to be independent from Denmark to be able to negotiate our own terms, potentially the United States buying us, negotiate our own deal. So there's a number of different things at play here. There are some people that say, well, we don't want this. We don't want to become an empire. This is really not the United States becoming an empire. They would not be a state. There's no way they would meet any of the requirements. There's too little of a population. It's 50,000 people total, which is why managing that and buying that land would be it would be something you would want to do, and it would be very realistic. And that's why I said Greenland is the realistic option. There's very limited population just along the coastlines because the country itself is a glacier. And another thing, Greenland is distorted on a map. It is a lot smaller than it appears. That's another thing to take into account when it comes to Greenland. Not to say it wouldn't be a great purchase. Greenland is probably going to make us trillions of dollars, but it's not even just like the amount of stuff that we can mined out of there in terms of natural resources. It's also the controlling the Arctic shipping lanes, which is a priceless thing to have military bases up there and have that be your land or your territory, whatever you want to call it. It's priceless. You really can't put a price on controlling areas in the world. And so it would become a territory. It's going to be treated similar to Puerto Rico. And I would imagine that Don Jr. is going there almost to scout the area and take everything in and try and start a good relationship with that government, because if they do get independence from Denmark, that would be the negotiation with their government for acquiring their territory and them becoming part of the United States through being a territory, not through being a state. They would be a territory. So again, it would be like possibly a Puerto Rico situation, although there are different dynamics at play when it comes to it. Obviously, Puerto Rico's got a much, much bigger population than Greenland, and Greenland would be more of a strategic type thing. But this is just what I would imagine. So Don Jr. remember the whole thing about Don Jr. being second behind J.D. Vance in terms of the Republican nominee? Well, now Trump is putting him out there, having him go to Greenland, scout Greenland. What is that? What is he? What, going to be part of this administration and do things like this? And he's starting his political career. Really, I'm not trying to read too much into it, but it's kind of funny that he's sending Don Jr. And I'm just telling everyone, you really can't speculate on 2028 because we just don't know the Trump dynamic. Whoever Trump wants, as long as his administration is doing somewhat well, if he wants his son, there's gonna be a lot of people that vote for his son because Trump says so. And that's just the way it is. And there's no way again, you can speculate because we don't know what's going to happen, the ambitions of Junior and everything like that. But it is kind of funny that he's sending his son out there to do that, especially with the recent polls with the Republican. I still think it's going to be Vance, but again, it's useless to even speculate it right now. I just thought it was kind of funny that Don Jr. is going out there. But either way, guys, I would say right now, the odds on acquiring Greenland, it's hard to put an exact number because we still don't really know if Greenland wants to play ball. And then it comes down to the whole NATO dynamic based on where Greenland is located, with the European countries to the east, with the United States to the west. If Greenland really says, screw you, Trump, we're not playing ball. But it's like they need someone to help keep them afloat. I mean, 1/3 of their GDP comes from Denmark. So would it be some type of deal they would do with European countries? If I was Trump, and I think this is probably the dynamic with NATO, if Greenland really doesn't want to become a territory to the United States, if they're really like, no, this is not happening, obviously the first thing people would say, well, just go invade them. You really don't want to do that. I would just give an ultimatum to NATO and be like, listen, you guys need to force Greenland and tell them, because obviously if you get a number of high level, first world countries to say you need to do this, they would end up doing it. Telling the NATO countries, you need to force them to sell to the United States, otherwise we're going to leave NATO, or NATO, something's going to happen. I mean, the United States has that bully ability because of how big their military is. And so you would never want to break out military force against Greenland because it's not worth it. But the acquisition of Greenland is, Trump's got a few different tricks up his sleeve. He can also offer the people of Greenland very likely a better just way of life. And in terms of the infrastructure investment from the United States, they've got several pressing issues in terms of how cold it is in Greenland and the infrastructure problems with the Wi-Fi being an issue there, as well as just overall power outages because of how cold it gets with wind chills into the negatives, even along the coast, which is where all the cities are. They still deal with all of that. And so you can offer that if you're the United States, especially if Greenland's not getting any more money from Denmark, and now you don't have to negotiate with Denmark. But I think at this point, even if you have to negotiate with Denmark, wouldn't it be even better considering Greenland doesn't even like Denmark at this point and they want to be independent? So it's not like Denmark can be like, no, we're not selling them because they like us and not you. That's not even what's going on, because originally it seemed like back in 2019 that was the dynamic there with Denmark and Greenland. But now Greenland's like, no, we want to be independent, but you kind of need someone to help keep you up just based off of how isolated they are and the limited forms of making money they have there. It's really just fishing, and you have to deal with freezing water, things like that. So either way, I think this is like a scouting thing for Don Jr., so he's sending him there. You form relationships with their government. If they do become independent, the United States swoops in, and it's really the best for everyone, best for people in the West to secure that country. United States sets up military bases there. They control the Arctic shipping lanes. They get a lot of natural resources, and the people of Greenland get infrastructure investments and other things. Get a good trade deal. They've got an employment problem there. They've got a lot of unemployment. You help with that. This is really a win-win situation. And I think Trump needs to try and talk about that. And he really wants it. He's saying, look at this guy. I mean, this guy, he wants to be part of the United States. These people in Greenland, some of them do, I'm sure. And it makes total sense. They get complete protection. Although Greenland isn't necessarily in a war situation going to be a huge target. But it's still a situation that we want to be able to mine the stuff there, and we want the global presence. And people are like, well, the United States is becoming an empire. That's just not what this is at all. Do people really even feel like we control Puerto Rico? I mean, Puerto Rico is just a territory. When we vote in elections, you look at a United States map, they're not even on there. And the same thing, it would be for Greenland as well. So it's not necessarily like, oh, we're annexing Greenland and they're just going to become a part of us. And it's a little bit different than that. It's not this crazy territorial empire type expansion to where you annex Canada and Greenland. I mean, that would be pretty crazy. You would have full control of the Arctic at that point, and you would have so many natural resources, but that's going to enable adversaries to get a little bit aggressive themselves because they look at the United States and they say, and it's just going to cause destabilization. That's the problem. But I think this is going to end up happening. I think Greenland will happen. I think maybe the Panama Canal will happen. It seems like they're playing more hardball. I don't know what Greenland is really thinking. They probably want to be independent, but can they really sustain themselves without Denmark? So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. And then obviously Canada's, to me, it's never going to happen. They're not going to be the 51st state. There's going to be some maybe economic union there that gets formed, but that was just my opinion on that. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.